Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 881. Sorry about the loss of the audio towards the end of that video. That's just something that happens on my machine. Sometimes when I'm recording, the audio will just drop out. I'm not sure why. Usually I throw those videos away, but in this case, I thought it was a nice game and a good way to start off the new year. My first Blitz game of the new year. I was playing pretty well, so I decided to go ahead and upload it, and we can check the game out. So I started with c4, and here he went g6. You can see that black has a wide range of possibilities against the English. There are lots of different ways to play, and g6 is certainly a fine move. You know, this c4 move, it's not putting any pressure on the center, so that really does give black a lot of latitude. But on the other hand, white also gets to choose the kind of setup that he wants. So we continue in some lines that are not too unusual up to this point. c6 is a bit rare right here, but there doesn't seem to be anything particularly wrong with it. Chess Engine did not find any big mistakes, and you can see that we wander back in towards more populated parts of the opening book. So we're not out of the opening book yet. Let's see, he continued knight f6. If I continue with knight f3, we'd be up to 21 games. Knight f3 is really the most normal move here. But I played e4. I'm going for the Botvinnik setup. So the Botvinnik setup is this pawn triangle. You put pawns on the light squares here in the center, just setting up a solid center. And this knight comes out to e2 to support a eventual f4 pawn push. Or perhaps you can also play on the queenside with b4. And it stays out of the way of the bishop, which may gain some scope on that diagonal as things open up in the center. Let's see, he blocked with e5. Pretty reasonable. I go knight e2 and castled. I castled, and you can see after he plays d6 here, we're back into a section of the database where, you know, there's several games, about 20, 30 games. Let's see, d4 is the most common move here, and that would be an interesting way to play. Probably okay for white. Kind of a typical way to play against the King's Indian, but I'm going for the Botvinnik setup, so I went with d3 here. Oh, let's back off. I actually didn't play d3 here, did I? I could have played d3 there. I played h3 first. That's to stop a piece from coming to this square, but I think actually the move order is a bit wrong. Didn't really need to play that just yet, and I probably should have held off on that. Anyway, he's the one who goes out of opening book here with this move, queen b6. So we can just look at it with the notation tab. It just doesn't seem to be a good square for the queen, so I can't really recommend this move. And the Chess Engine starts to give white a pretty big advantage after this. And, well, we'll see some of the reasons why the queen there is not that effective. And here's the first one. I could have played bishop e3 here. That's the move I want to play. That's part of the setup. And then I would later follow with queen d2 and maybe put the bishop there to trade off. But I was worried about this pawn over here. But it turns out he can't take that pawn. There's a nice move here, a3. And that queen is actually trapped. Even though black has a move, the queen is not under threat. It's just that all of its escape squares have been taken away, so it has no moves. So it's in stalemate, I guess. It has no moves. And there's no move that black has that can save it. And if he does nothing, you know, like a move like h6 or something, there's actually two different ways to trap the queen. You can play rook a2 and win the queen that way, or you can also play knight to a4 and win the queen that way. So it's a goner for two different reasons. So anyway, I could have played that. So I played the move queen c2, which is a bit of a time waster. Although you know, black has played some moves that weren't the most precise as well, so I still keep an opening edge. And let's see, bishop e3. He decides he wants to keep the queen there for a bit and blocks with the c pawn. I put my rook on the b file. Let's see, he goes a6. I guess he wants to keep my knight out of the b5 square. I go king h2. King h2, the Chess Engine criticized that move. It wants to play a little more actively here. It says I've done enough setup and I could continue with f4 or b4. And in fact, you know, if I was continuing, I'd probably play f4. I usually play that when it seems reasonable, but the Chess Engine actually prefers playing on the queen side with b4. That is one interesting thing about the Botvinnik system, is that it gives you a choice. You know, kind of fixes the center and gives you a choice of whether to play on the king side or the queen side, and both of them are reasonable options in this particular position. Let's see, so queen c7 to get away from the opening of the b file, which is going to happen. Takes, and knight to d5. This seems to be a pretty good position for white. Chess Engine likes white quite a lot here. So that'd be one way to play, and more active than the way I played. So king h2 allows black to pretty much equalize. So I now go f4. He takes, and I take with the knight. Well, I can't say equalize. I think white still has an advantage here. I could also have taken with the pawn. I looked at this later, or the bishop, and they all lead to an advantage for white. But the knight, taking with the knight, was slightly preferable to those other moves. It does put some pressure on this bishop right away, and yeah, it's just a good square for the knight. Let's see, he goes knight c6, just continuing to develop. And then I plunged into d5 right away. The computer wasn't so sure about this. It was going to play some waiting moves at that point, maybe some pawn moves or some rook moves. But I think this is the way to make progress in the position. Put a knight there. Let's see, he takes with the bishop. He needs to. If he takes with a pawn, if he takes with a knight, then when I take with a pawn, it'll be forking his pieces. So if he wants to get rid of it, he has to take with the bishop. And then I take back with the knight. My idea is that I'll either get rid of this piece or I'll have a strong knight here. Anyway, he decides to trade it off. So I've gotten rid of one of the defenders against the king, and so I think this gives me some good chances. Although the chess engine says black should be okay after a move like knight to d4, kicking my queen away. He went knight to b4, which I also played queen d2 after that. But there's a better way to play against that knight on b4. It's not quite as secure there as it might seem. So queen b3, well, you have to move the queen to get away from the knight. It defends, keeps the d-pawn defended, and actually if you look at it, that knight has no retreat squares. So you're threatening just to win the knight. So black would have to play a5 to defend, well, not to defend the knight, to give it a square, and then you can kick it and it drives it back to a6. So this is a pretty good advantage to white, I guess, because of that knight being kicked back to a bad square, and I still have pressure on the b file here. Anyway, that's how that's best play according to the chess engine. So queen d2 was just a mistake. I didn't even notice that my a pawn was hanging for some reason, and he took it. But it's not all bad. I mean, his knight's a bit out of place, so I have compensation for the pawn. But you know, up to this point, the chess engine has been favoring white, and after this point, it's favoring black, or at best equal, at least for quite a while. So, but it's not quite a whole pawn advantage, I guess, is my point. I do have some compensation. Let's see, I went with bishop h6 right away. I want to trade off that dark squared bishop, get rid of the annoying pressure on the b pawn. He saved his knight, and he takes back. Then I start building up on the f file, typical attacking idea here. He defends with rook f8, bring the other rook over, plays rook a to e8, and then I play queen to f4. So queen to f4, the chess engine didn't quite approve of that. It would continue the attack with h4 first, maybe setting that up. The thing about queen f4 is it seems that if black would just play queen to e7, he's holding off the attack okay, and now he can bring this knight back into the game with a maneuver like this, and then black is probably just a pawn up at that point. That's what the evaluation is indicating. So that was his chance. That was his biggest edge in the game. Instead, he went rook to e7, allowing me to well, bring my queen in with check, and then I started pushing the h-pawn. And then the next move is actually the losing move of the game. He should just drop his rook back and just defend his back rank. There were problems along the back rank, which you may have noticed in the game. And when he played h5, he has those back rank problems, and he's also weakened his g-pawn, because now there's this pin on the f-pawn. Whenever that moves, that rook is hanging there. And so this is winning for white, although white, of course, has to find the right moves. And bishop to h3 is the right move in this position. Basically, what you have to look at is, where are your opponent's weaknesses? You can pretty much guarantee whenever your opponent plays a move like h5, he's weakened his king side somewhat. And then you'll notice that all these pawns are on light squares, and you have a light squared bishop. So bringing that into the game seems like the most logical way to proceed. And in fact, it does give the biggest advantage in this position. So that was top choice. He played rook e5, which, well, basically everything loses. The best move here, according to the chess engine, was knight takes d3. And if he has to give up the knight, then things can't be that good. So rook e5 is a reasonable try. I mean, it keeps my queen out of this square. I was thinking of stepping my queen over here and then bringing in my bishop. So I had to stop and think. And I realized after a while that I could just bring my bishop in immediately. Again, it's because of the pin here. If he had the rook back on the e8 instead of up here on e5, defending here, then it wouldn't be so straightforward. That might be, let's see, queen takes, rook takes, rook takes. Yeah, it would be 2 rooks for a queen if he takes the bishop, so you get queen and bishop for 2 rooks, so that would be good. Yeah, so I wouldn't be able to play this trick if his rook were back on e8. But here, he can't take it with the pawn, or he loses the rook, and if he takes it with this rook, he'll lose that rook. So he's going to be down the exchange in any case. He tried something clever with this knight takes d5 move, hitting my queen, but my queen can escape with check, taking advantage of this pin here. Kind of a nice maneuver, something to keep an eye out for. And then he went king h8, only move. And now here's your chance. I did not find the best move in this position, but there is, there's forced mates on the board. But there's one that's quickest. So find the best move in the sense of the move that gets to mate the quickest. Okay, pause the video if you want some time to think about it. I'm going to give the answer away. The best move here is bishop takes f7. Now, there were other winning moves here, so don't be upset if you found something else that also forces mate. But this is a nice one. The threat is queen to h6. That's a mate because the bishop is guarding that escape square. And let's see, the chess engine gave rook here to e6 as a way to guard the h6 square, which is just giving up material. And in fact, it also still leads to a mate. There's a mate in 4 from this point, no matter what black does. So that was the answer. Bishop takes f7, and you can work out the other mates if you want to. Anyway, I went with queen h6 check. Basically, I'm just getting my queen out of trouble so I can grab the rook. It's often a reasonable idea to, in a blitz game when you don't have time to calculate out the mates, just grab the material and just play a easily winning position. But there was a forced mate there that I missed. Let's see. He went ahead and took my bishop. I took back, and then he went queen to b6. So I was trying to get a little counterattack going against my b pawn, which would come with check. I threw in a few checks first. I went queen g5 check, queen here check, king g7. And now I could have finished the game like I did eventually, but I threw in this move rook 1 to f2. So that was unnecessary because the finish to the game is every move is a check. So he would never have had time to take on b2, even though that comes with check. But anyway, rook f2 just stops that idea. Let's see, he moved his queen to b3. And now I see the idea. And like I said, this is all of a check, so it's just a forced mate here. And he let me checkmate him. So anyway, it was an interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you again soon.